and welcome to a very special episode of Charlton TV, our online fans meeting. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by club directors James Rodwell, Paul Elliott, CB, MBE and Gavin Carter. We have got a jam-packed agenda to get into, so without further ado, let's see what's coming up on Charlton TV. We'll begin today's meeting with a presentation from the directors looking at where the club is and explaining the changes being made to bring about progress. We'll then be joined by fan representatives on Zoom who will be putting their questions to the club directors. Finally, everybody at home will get the chance to ask their questions on WhatsApp. So here is the all-important WhatsApp number to get in contact with us here in the Charlton TV studio. I will pose your questions directly to my guests in the studio, and we've got plenty coming through already, so I will do my very best to get through as many as possible. So without further ado, it's a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us in the Charlton TV studio. James, it's a pleasure to have you here. Your first trip up to the Charlton TV studio.
I have been here once before, but no, thank you for inviting us and thank you for turning up. It is bitterly cold in here, I can assure people, but we'll make the best of it, I'm sure.
We certainly will. And let's just kind of use this as an opportunity to introduce each of you and to let supporters know a bit about your roles within the club as well.
Okay, well, I'm James Rodwell. I'm the chairman and the managing director of the business. And to my left here, a man who needs very little introduction to the Charlton fan base, Paul Elliott, very special man, special player. And post his playing career, obviously he's gone on to excel. One of Europe's leading lights, one of the world's leading lights, away from FIFA. Both refer to Paul for all matters in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion. So we're thrilled to have Paul with us on the board. And then just to Paul's left, we've got Gavin Carter, lifelong Charlton Athletic fan, who keeps us on the straight and narrow. Gavin is a tech entrepreneur who is burning many air miles, commuting from Canada for most of the home games. And yeah, we're thrilled to be here and obviously honoured and privileged to be part of the football club.
Well, it is great to have you here and to have this opportunity on Charlton TV to host and let supporters pose their questions, but also to hear from you directly about the vision moving forwards for the football club. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to James for the club presentation.
There you go, first tech issue.
No, it's all good, James. If you want to fire away and we'll get the slides up for you on screen.
I was waiting for the first slide. There you go. I think first of all, Charlotte, it's important for me to just try to frame the discussion a little bit. And what we're not going to do today is try to kill people by PowerPoint overly. But I think the slides are useful to be able to, not least for me to be able to refer back to, but just to see people so people can, maybe formulate their questions accordingly afterwards. But what we're here to do today, I think, is being realistic about where we are. Nobody's trying to paint this incredibly rosy picture, but by the same token, it's not all doom and gloom either. We've now been here since towards the end of July, just before the season started, which is the worst possible timing. But there you go. You can't be, hopefully we had the aborted takeover earlier in the year, but sometimes these things happen when they happen. And obviously we're all thrilled and honoured, and I think I speak for my colleagues, we're all privileged to be here. But I think what we wanted to be was realistic, and this isn't carefully rehearsed by us three. It is about, we'll jump in and we'll take the presentation together, and hopefully at the end we can answer some questions. So just a few facts up there. We call this state of play. This is where we are currently, we believe. For the last 10 years, really, we've been one of the biggest spenders in this division, and undoubtedly we are not where we want to be. The fans will tell me that Charlton shouldn't be in League One, and we believe that also. But you are where you are in the football pyramid. That is the whole point. And we've constantly underachieved, quite frankly. There have been good seasons, Lee Bowyer most recently, and a group of players that did very, very well. But our plan isn't to be a roller coaster team to go up and down the divisions. We want to, steady progress, basically. So you can see that I'm not intending to read through all of those. There's one there that sticks out in the middle saying the club has lost more than £45 million in the last 10 years, which is, not an acceptable place to be. Our underperformance it hasn't been about one person or one individual or one owner. We think it's been collective. We think it's been the lack of a cohesive plan, and hopefully we can do something about that. But at the moment, we accept this isn't where we hope to be right at this moment. But by the same token, it has only been about 6 months, and what it's given us is the opportunity to try to look at everything within the football club, from obviously the playing side, which people are most enthused about, but everything, our commercial contracts, the people that work here, are the structures correct, are we getting the most out of the training ground, all kinds of things. So I think they're the sorts of things that we're probably going to focus on in the next 90 minutes or so. We're actually going to talk less about the things that we actually do really well, such as the academy, the community trust. Even the women's team at the moment are excelling. So we'll probably talk a little bit less about those things and focus on the things where we've really got to focus our energies at the moment. So that's where we are at the moment. Don't know if you guys want to jump in there and say anything, or...
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for us to articulate the plans, and there are many plans around the football club, and I think these slides just speak to, each slide is just one aspect of the plan, and we have to bring all those plans together and execute the plans. We have to modify the plans as situations change, but the important thing that we've done over the last 6 months is take time to assess, take time to build the plan, and now what's important is to make sure that everybody's got the tools to be successful, because I think clearly coming in we've seen gaps, and we need to address those gaps. It can't all be done overnight, and the point of the plan is to have a well thought through list of actions that we need to continue to take to make sure that we are the most cohesive, community driven football club playing at an elite level.
I can imagine it's been an absolute whirlwind these opening 6 months, and as you mentioned, even the timing of securing and taking ownership of the football club. So if we move on to the next slide now, you've mentioned about how much has been learned, how the plans have been put in place, and cohesiveness and community are certainly two words that I would associate with Charlton Athletic Football Club. Is that part of the future plans moving forwards?
I certainly believe so. I mean, if you think about it, I was very fortunate not just to be an expert at this club, but co-founded the Community Trust back in 2004. And I think that everything that this club has done, I think the Community Trust, and particularly equality, diversity and inclusion, has been the very heartbeat of the club's evolution, its growth. And I think that, no question about that, we've got one of the leading community trusts in the country, and I think moving forward there has to be this, and we're all brought up to this wonderful alignment with all facets of the club. And what we have, I think, which is very important for me, is a board. We've got a corporate structure. I think if you look at the previous ownership models, there wasn't a corporate structure. There was one person in a very autocratic way. Because I understand in my world, with the roles that cognitive diversity or diversity of opinion is absolutely critical and fundamental in any model. So we challenge each other. So I challenge Jim challenge me, and vice versa with Gavin, and we hold each other to account as board members to ensure consistency and continuity in the decision-making process. And I think that's what's very, very important to us moving forward, especially where we started from.
James, we can see on screen now perhaps one of the most important words in football, particularly in January as well, it seems, and that is recruitment. Talk to me a little bit about this challenge that the board has identified.
I actually think, I don't think we'll get any prizes for identifying recruitment. For me, recruitment is the very essence of football, to be honest with you. It's about how you spend your money as effectively as possible on the pitch, because that's what we're all here for. Everything that we do ultimately is try to get the best group of players we possibly can do on the pitch at any one time and win as many games of football, and hopefully it'll take us up the divisions. But as you can see there, I reiterate, I'm not going to sit here and read them all out to you, but there's never really been a plan about how this club really wants to play. Are we going to stick by it? Can we take that all the way from the first team down to the academy? Does that translate? There have been so many different managers, so many different players. It's been such a whirlwind. And when you look at the most successful football clubs, they all seem to be the football clubs that have the most, stable environment. And it's like anything, it's about having a plan. So We're going to, you know, obviously Andy Scott is our technical director. I think sometimes people don't necessarily understand his role fully. People think it's just about recruitment. I mean, my goodness, Andy's overseeing an awful lot of things at the moment at that training ground. But in January, in particular, where we are at the moment, particularly with our injury crisis, you know, we have to trade in January. And I've been doing this a long time now, and I've never known a January that's this difficult. It is undoubtedly a seller's market. And nobody wants to let go of their good players, and players sometimes find it quite difficult to make decisions at times. So I understand the fans' frustrations. They want to see people coming into the building. We want to see people coming into the building desperately, but it's got to be right for this football club. We're trying to sign personalities and characters as much as anything else, so we get the right type of people in the building. And the slide that you can see there is just, you know, this is the way that we hope to go about it. In a first team squad of probably 24, I just thought people might be interested in seeing how a playing budget might be made up. As I said, our playing budget at the moment is probably about the second, third highest in this division. Clearly, that's not the league position we're in at the moment, so we're underachieving against budget. That can be for many reasons, but this is how we can, this is one of the ways in which we look to try to build our squad. 8 elite League One players, you can see on there how we define that. Then you've got the consistent League One players, and what we have at this football club that we're incredibly proud about, we look to have 8 academy graduates at any one time in the 24. I don't think there are many football clubs in the country that could do that, but thanks to the work of Steve and Tom and all the academy coaches and the people that contribute over that period of time, that gives us an incredible opportunity. And that basically is how we look to build that squad of 24. Other people will have their views about what elite players are, and clearly there is a budgetary constraint in there as well. Your elite players are generally earning more than your academy graduates and so on and so forth. But we've been very fortunate in that regard, and I think that last line, I think Gavin might just touch on that, but you know, we presented in January to our ownership group, and they, as they have done consistently, they've given us the tools to do the job. They've said, okay, if that's what you need, you think you need to be successful, then we're happy to fund that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, when the investors came in, the club was underperforming. So no one came in here under any illusions that, you know, the club was performing and that there wasn't, you know, significant change that didn't need to happen. And so there's always been that appetite to invest. I think as an investor myself, you want to make sure there's a well thought out plan and a clear structure. And it's taken the first part of the season for that assessment to be done. Andy doing that assessment alongside Jim and others. And now with that structure in place, the 8 plus 8 plus 8, we want to make sure that we're investing particularly in those 8 elite positions. And I mean, Brownie speaks about the core a lot. And, you know, Brownie will tell you the core hasn't been built out here over the last 3 or 4 years. And it's not to say we haven't got any elite players, because we clearly have, but we have to build out that core to support the youngsters, because it's all well and good having one of the best academies, but if we're not then able to further develop those players, and we do want those players to be successful at Charlton, it's not our plan to develop players to sell off to generate cash or anything like that. You know, we want our academy performing in the first team, but in order for them to perform in the first team, you have to have the right players around them as well. And those 8 elite players will be a focus, not just of this window, but of subsequent windows to come. As Jim says, obviously very difficult to get players in, particularly in January. We have to instill belief in players coming, because we're looking for players not wanting to climb up to Charlton. We're looking for players playing in higher divisions, higher levels, to come down and bring us up. So we have to make sure that they believe in everything that we want to do. And as we bring in players, we think that belief will continue to grow.
It's really interesting to see in those couple of slides the emphasis on permanent signings as well, because I imagine for all clubs it's a bit of a struggle to get that balance right between those permanent personalities, like you say, but also dipping into a loan market that can be really, really successful. Building on from recruitment and seeing the sort of scope of how you want the squad to be assembled moving forwards, I know that physical performance is something that's been highlighted as well.
I think it's been a huge frustration for a lot of the fan base, and it's been a huge frustration for us that the amount of injuries that we seem to have picked up, and long-term injuries to very key players, is incredibly frustrating. You know, our idea is you've got to keep your players and your better players available for selection, and I'm not quite sure that we've really thought about that hard enough. So I think we mentioned it previously, but we're delighted that actually Dr. Will Abbott is joining us from Brighton on Monday. We've had to wait 3 or 4 months for Will to join us, which gives an idea of how highly regarded he was at Brighton, because I had to wrench him away a little bit from my very good friend Paul Barber at Brighton. He was very highly regarded, but Will wanted to come and be part of our project. We sold our project to him, and we think he's going to be a huge advantage to us against other teams when it comes to, you know, making sure that our players are in absolute tip-top condition. You know, I'm not a physicist, clearly, by any stretch of the imagination, or a medical professional, but I think, you know, all the goals that we've conceded after 90 minutes, one of the reasons you could potentially put that down to is maybe the pre-season that we endured this year. We weren't here, so we didn't get to see the what actually went on, but I think we're seeing the consequence of that at the moment. And just the way that we condition, the way we look after our players, we've got to look at everything. The psychology of it is desperately important.
And you're right, Jim, and I think for me, I mean, I sat with, I think it was at the Burton game, and it was rather interesting that I think he's delighted to be here. I think this club is a measure that where we are, that we can attract somebody of that quality. He wanted to be a number one. He was in a very prominent, a very comfortable position at Brighton, but obviously he's looking at his own aspirations. He wants to be a number one. And I actually remember having, you know, articulating a kind of dialogue with him during the game, where he's actually saying to me, Paul, I'm looking at Charlton Athletic Football Club, and it reminds him of Brighton pre the success they had, where they had a, you know, excellent academy, but they've got a first class, a Premier League infrastructure, a Premier League training ground, Premier League aspirations, but obviously, you know, had had a very challenging period of a decade or so. So he saw this as it was part of his own personal evolution, and I saw that as very inspiring, and I think that that's a really key indicator of what we are trying to do, that we are able to attract somebody of such calibre and magnitude.
Yeah, and I think the point you were saying as well, James, about the goals conceded late on, I think I read a stat that somewhere, if those goals in the sort of last 10 minutes in additional time hadn't been conceded, would be 2 points or something like that off of the top 6. So when you're looking at the talent that's clearly within the squad, when it is fully available, it heightens that frustration, I suppose.
It absolutely does. And just to echo Paul's point, whether it's Will or whether it's the players or whether it's somebody that we bring into the office, we need people joining this football club with their eyes wide open. People who turn up at the Valley and they see this is a life-changing opportunity for me. You don't want people on the way down, you want people on the way up. That doesn't mean you can't sign experienced players who have still got that hunger and desire, but we need people who turn up at this football club like we do and look at it and go, this can change my life. This is the land of opportunity. I can really achieve something at this football club, because the limits on this football club, we haven't touched them for a long time, you know, probably since the last time the football club was in the Premier League. So Will embodies the type of person that we want joining this football club, and the reasons why they're joining this football club is desperately important all over the football club.
On the note of aspiration, I think the Charlton Athletic Academy for young footballers, male and in more recent years female footballers, has been the academy that young players want to join. You look at the pipeline of talent, and I know we said we're not going to reflect on it too much, but it would be remiss because it is such an important foundation for the future.
I mean, it's remarkable, really. I know Steve's been here a long time. I mean, as I remind him often, probably about 75 years. But the job that he's done and the job that Tom Pell is now doing with Steve, and they'll be the first ones to say, and all the coaches and Bert in the scouting and recruitment of, the job that they've done is really quite remarkable. I mean, I was lucky enough at Sunderland to work in a Cat 1 academy, and I've, you know, without fear of contradiction, I would suggest that the Academy of Charlton is probably better. I'm sure the Sunderland fans will hate me for that, but I think you look at what Sunderland do is remarkable, but what Charlton do is incredible, especially when you consider what Charlton are actually up against. People tell me that the location of Charlton is actually an advantage. I said, well, potentially, but you're still competing with Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, Millwall, Crystal Palace, all these clubs on your doorstep. And, you know, the proof is in the pudding, and it really is.
With that in mind, Jim, you know, I use the phrase continuity and stability equals success. We've had tremendous continuity over many, many years because we've got the stability within the environment, within Steve Avery. The same thing, we've got that in the trust with Jason, that continuity and stability, which yields tremendous success. And I think historically, even when I was here sometime many years ago, Charlton has always had a large percent of our players, you know, from a diverse background. The club has been extremely welcoming in that phase. And I think that's one of our key USPs, that people are welcoming, they're very happy. We've got an excellent culture where we welcome people, you know, that from all diverse backgrounds. And I think, you know, what we're looking at now moving forward is to embrace that in the wider fan base model as well. We've got a substantive local demographic there, you know, an Afro-Caribbean demographic that was saying we want to reach out to people and welcome people, because I think that diversity is so important and it's really representative of the modern day game. And I think, Charlotte, you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm honoured to be part of this club, because I can see historically not just that we've been consistently evolving, but it's a key USP. If you look at the players that we've got week to week, if you look at that demographic across the whole of the organisation, it's absolutely fantastic. And that extends also to the women's game as well. That diversity in the women's game, that diversity within the trust. So what I said, you know, I remember having my very first conversation and somebody said to me, Paul, what do you want? You know, when they talk about Charlton Athletic, what would you like it to be? I says, when people talk about Forest Green Rovers, straight away people think leaders in sustainability and the environment. My aspiration for this club is to be the equivalent of that within EDI. Equality, diversity and inclusion is embedded in every single facet of the club, from the community right the way to the boardroom.
It is such an important part of the football club, and it kind of leads us nicely away from on the pitch matters to off the pitch matters. I think it was a year ago today that 10,000 odd Charlton supporters travelled to Old Trafford, despite the rail strikes, to go and support the team in the Carabao Cup quarter-final. And I think for many that was a bit of a marker in terms of the deep-rooted support that's at that football club that we might not be seeing week in, week out at the Valley, which of course is yet another challenge. Marketing, is that part of the solution moving forward?
It's absolutely how we market ourselves to our fan base is desperately important. We've actually undertaken quite a lot of work on this in recent months, and we've actually engaged external companies to look at what is our fan base, how do we grow our fan base, who are the people that we're talking to. And I think the first thing that I have to make absolutely clear, we are thrilled and delighted and respectful of all the fans that turn up here week in, week out, to support the football club. In, you know, sometimes when the football isn't the best and the weather isn't the best. So believe you me, we don't take that for granted, and we're hugely respectful of that. But nevertheless, we do need to get more supporters in the stadium. You know, you'll hear that from us regularly. And we're in this relatively unusual scenario whereby the vast majority of our fan base don't actually live particularly close to the stadium. We're in this huge urbanisation, about 1.2 million people in the actual close proximity to the Valley, and not many of those people actually come to games. When you look at the people who comes to games, I would assume that most of our fan base that are watching today, a lot of people live in Bromley and Dartford, and people have moved out over generations to Kent. But we've also, whilst making those people incredibly welcome, we've got to make the local community welcome as well. Exactly. People that probably haven't thought about football, so the experience has to change just a little bit in that regard. How we reach out to people, how do we make it more appealing to families, for example? You know, you come and watch the women's games, it's a very different dynamic to that watches the men's games. How do we appeal and make it more appealing to families? How does that experience improve? How do we relate to a more diverse fan base? How do we get those people coming to watch football matches?
As well, a lot of that diverse fan base are actually from a low socio-economic and disadvantaged background. So that's where the Community Trust does some brilliant work. And also to be more expansive, you know, when we're talking about the culture, you know, our partnership now with the academy in Mount Pleasant Academy in Jamaica, that's reflective of our playing base, which potentially is a really excellent opportunity in the long run. We're building these blocks to encourage that next generation of young people, not just on the field through the academy, through the elite model, but also activating that fan base and that demographic, you know, that's clearly evident and visible, that underpinned by the data within, you know, the three boroughs, you know, Bexley, Kent, and obviously, you know, Greenwich as well. So they're out there. So what we have to do, and which we you know, is a strong part of our consideration, working simultaneously how we're going to engage with them, because not just the reconnection of the existing fan base, which is absolutely critical and of paramount importance, but also the next generation too.
Yeah, we've spoken about the team on the pitch and the personnel, the personality required. Talk to me a little bit about the team off of the pitch, the ones that are here sort of day to day, and how you're going to be utilising that team, or what you've observed so far in terms of the organisational structure, and how is it going to be moving forwards?
We've gone through quite a restructure at the moment, both in terms of the training ground and here at the Valley. And these are the people that come to work week in, week out. And you know what? They have such a sense of responsibility for this club. Really good people. You know, you come into a new business, you tend to inherit these people. Really good people, but I just think at times they needed some help. They needed to be listened to. People were working in silo. People were working, you know, in spite of the football club at times, and they were all in sort of survival protection mode, which is no way for people to come to work at all. So we had to release people from that. So we looked at the various structures and reporting lines, and an awful lot of this was non-existent. And I think most people want to come to work to understand, what is your purpose at work? What are we trying to do today? Who do you report to? And we don't run some crazy hierarchy here at all, but I think people want to understand what their teams look like. So we've undergone quite an extensive restructure at the moment. So people are just very clear about what their roles and responsibilities are at the football club and how they're contributing to the success of this football club. I think Gavin's going to talk about a culture piece that we've done at the moment, but of course we now think we've got an organisation that's streamlined, that's fit for purpose, that's fit for the 21st century. Unfortunately, some people have left the organisation because of that, not because they're bad people, they're doing bad jobs. Sometimes, you know, we come into this with a certain vision. People have come into the business with a certain skill sets. Unfortunately, some people's roles become redundant in all of that. But I think it's actually been what we've tried to do. And what we want to do is empower people, make decisions. I'm not telling people what to do, you know, of all hours. We've got really, really good people here. So as much as anything, it's about taking that talent out of people. And they've been great. I mean, to a man, they have been fabulous at this football club. But I think Gavin might just want to talk about some of the piece we've been doing around the culture.
I mean, it may be stating the obvious, but it's a people business. You know, it's all about people, and I think one of the key things that has been assessed in the early innings here is a big opportunity to develop the culture. You know, there's great heritage within the club, but you know, we need to build a cohesive culture where everybody understands their purpose and can believe in what we want to accomplish as a football club. And it's one of the areas that we've invested in. We've invested in external people to help us on this. So we've done quite a lot of work on building out a thought process around vision and around culture, making sure that is inclusive, that everybody around the club and in the club can support that and can consult on that. So that includes current players, ex-players, current staff, even ex-staff we've involved in that process. One of the things which we did, I think it must have been about a month ago now, is that we did a town hall style meeting where everybody within the club came to the Valley, and I think it was for 90 minutes. And I think that was the first time, certainly in a very long time, that the whole club had got together. Players mixing with other staff, talking about the club, talking about what they can do to improve aspects of the club. And this is the type of thing that we want to do on a consistent basis. So we're constantly reinforcing that purpose, that belief that everybody knows what they're doing to drive success across the football club, which will hopefully result in success on the field at the end of the day.
And I think that's so important. I've worked in environments where there's been a poor culture, a bad culture. And whilst everybody's driven to the success on the field, of course they are, I am, everybody are, you won't get that continuity and sustainability of outcomes on the field until you get the culture right off the field within the day-to-day running of the organisation. I can guarantee, I stand by that for 40 years in the game. So for me, that's so important, and we've got some tremendous staff here who are good people. They care about the club, and one of the most important things is to ensure everybody that's here, they feel valued, they feel respected, they feel wanted, and each of them know how they can make a positive contribution. So whether that's Sylvia the cleaner, the grounds person, the person that works at the secretariat, the person that greets you when you arrive, it's important that everybody knows how they are contributing individually and collectively to the success for Charlton out there on the field of play. And if you get that right off the field, eventually you're going to get that right on the field with all the other elements about the right investment, the right recruitment, because recruitment is key. Of course it's key, and we know that. So what we are doing simultaneous positive action points. And I think this has been great, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've learned it. We've learned a lot about ourselves. We've had EDI training for one of the very first time as well. That was our very first lessons here as a board, because we all learning, and we never stop learning because it continued to evolve all the time. So the culture piece is really the heartbeat. And then so when you talk about some of the outcomes, it's been a culture of losing. So we have to address that, and we are addressing that. But what we're also doing simultaneously is addressing the cultural pieces off the field. So we are all inextricably aligned for the betterment of Charlton Athletic to get consistency and continuity in results, which equals eventual success.
Brilliant stuff, and I'm really conscious that time is flying away, and we have a few more slides to get through because we've spoken about marketing, we've spoken about fan engagement, and the matchday experience ultimately is really important. James, could you just quickly talk us through this element before we move on and start taking some questions from the supporters who I know are going to be wanting to pose some questions?
I'm sure they'll be chomping at the bit. No, but just another thing, we recognise that our matchday experience at the moment isn't as positive as it might be. There's very little we can do after the players cross the white line and go on the grass at 3 o'clock. We can never get quite guaranteed that, but what we should be able to offer is a better experience for people. And there are little things that we've done, and there's an awful lot more we intend to do. So we've done bits and pieces in the bars at the moment. We've improved some of the products. We're working hard with our catering partner, Gaither and Gaither, G&G. I mean, that's quite interesting as well. We came into the football club, and of course you inherit these agreements, and people told us, it's a terrible agreement and it's terrible people. They've actually been great. It's like anything. You go into a joint venture, you have to work with people. They're receptive to our ideas. They want to drive revenues. They've actually been a breath of fresh air to work with. I've enjoyed working with them. We're going to have a hospitality. We've had a big hospitality rethink. Are we using the lounges effectively? So you'll see some quite big changes coming there sooner or later. A fan zone. We really want to build a fan zone outside. I think it's more important we have a fan zone probably than a car park. And at the moment we're talking to Trivandi. If anybody wants to have a look, Trivandi are one of the biggest stadium consultants in the world actually. They're doing Aston Villa and Spurs. Just trying to look at the stadium and say, what can we do here? One, to obviously help sweat our asset, but just to give people a better experience about coming to the Valley. And then obviously one of our other big joint ventures at the moment is with our tech provider, Castor. Again, people told us all kinds of things about Castor. We found them okay to work with. We found them good. There have been one or two issues, but it's a joint venture and you have to treat it as such. And at the moment we're in quite advanced discussions about taking the shop back in-house, which we're quite excited about.
Well, thank you so much for talking us through that. It's fascinating to hear how it's been from your perspective over the last 6 months. And the all-important WhatsApp number is on your screens now. So if you've got any feedback, any questions you'd like me to follow up whilst I've got the directors here on Charlton TV, then do fire them through. I've got my phone ready. I can see the alerts coming through. But I think it's really, really important, before we do take on any questions, to address the issue of Danny Senda. The news came out yesterday. The former assistant manager was banned from football and all football-related activities for 4 years due to a misconduct that took place on a coaching course in June 2023. James, to what extent was the club aware of this misconduct charge?
Well, first of all, I think I've got to say, we found out yesterday at the same time as everybody else did what Mr. Senda had been banned from football for, and we were as disgusted and appalled as everybody else. We didn't have any knowledge of that at all. I think we put a statement out today. Well, put a statement out. We answered some questions today to the national media. We were aware in July. We took control of the football club on July the 21st. On July the 20th, there was an email sent into the football club, or we were copied into an email, and it was from the Football Association requesting a conversation with Danny Senda about a potential breach. We had no knowledge of what that breach might be. We had no knowledge, there was no context. It was just they wanted to speak to us about the potential breach. I mean, such as FA protocol. We didn't know what that was about. I think then I was made aware of it on about the 24th. And then Danny, we knew nothing whatsoever about the context, and this was, the behaviour, if I can call it that, took place on an FA course. This wasn't on Charlton Athletic business. Danny was then dismissed from his position as part of the Dean Holden termination, and to that point, Danny hadn't been charged with anything, so we weren't aware of the allegations at all. We were as shocked as anybody else when we found out yesterday what had happened.
Well, look, thank you for the clarity on that. I think it's really important, and suffice to say, certainly our thoughts are with the victims on that. Let's move on now to the next section, because we have plenty of questions coming through from supporters, but we also have some fan representatives joining us, I'm delighted to say, live on Charlton TV. From Charlton Athletics Supporters Trust, we have Heather Alderson, and we're also joined by our club's fan advisors, Lewis Catt and Lucy Bishop. Heather, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to have you on. Please fire away with your question to the directors.
My pleasure too. Firstly, thank you for speaking out to the fans. I think the fans have been wanting to hear from you for a while, and I think you've certainly acknowledged the need to open up about the things that you found and the things that you want to do. And I think what we've seen in your presentation is a diagnosis of some of the kind of symptoms, if you like, of a club that's not doing as well as any of us would like to do. But I think what we'd like to hear from you in addition is, where are we going? I mean, what's the 5-year plan? Where are we on our way to? What can we all get behind? What kind of club are we going to be a role model for? What kind of success are we all going to collectively aim for? Could you talk a bit about that, please?
Do you want to kick off, Gavin?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, from my perspective, we want to bring pride back to every Charlton supporter, and clearly at the moment that is lacking in the football club. So we, as I said earlier on, we do want to be the most cohesive, sustainable, important word. We want to make sure the club is sustainable and community-driven football club playing at an elite level. As fans, we know what an elite level looks like. You know, we've tasted success. Not every football club has tasted success, so we as fans know what that feels like, and we want to bring that back. Now, putting a timeline on things is obviously difficult, and to some degree can be dangerous. Certainly in 5 years' time, we need to be playing in a league higher than League One. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that we are executing on our plan, and importantly, we're giving the people the tools that they need to be successful, whether that's players, whether that's the scouting network, whether that's more data, whether that's more coaching, whatever it is. We need to make sure that in the early innings here, we are giving people those tools to be successful, so that we can continue to drive forwards, and again be a club that we're proud of. We used to be that model club, and now you look at clubs like Brighton and Brentford perhaps, but I want to make sure that Charlton is being discussed again as that model club, and we've got some pillars there, the community trust, the academy that we've spoken about as well, but there's other pillars that we need to build, and it's going to take a
model of what,
Gavin,
just to be quite specific?
So, sorry, Heather, the model club, or
so when you say model club, of what type of club?
A club that is part of that community, a club that develops its own talent, a club that is financially secure, a club that fans want to turn up with and engage on, a club that is responsible, a club that other clubs can model themselves on and say, we want to be like Charlton. We want other clubs to say we want to be like Charlton because of the success that we are hopefully able to drive.
Thank you, Heather. Any follow-up questions
Yeah.
to that at all?
Yeah, we do. And Lucy Bishop and I are going to alternate a little bit so that you don't just hear my voice initially or hers. Another question and related to success on the pitch in this instance. Michael Appleton has had a win rate of around 30% or thereabouts. And in the two of our most successful managers recently had win rates of in the low 40s in Chris Powell and Lee Bowyer, who got us promoted out of our respective divisions. You talked a lot about the squad approach to building momentum going forward. Is Appleton part of that squad?
Yes, absolutely, Heather. Michael's our head coach. I have sympathy for Michael. I'm sure he won't thank me for offering it, but I do have sympathy for Michael. If you look at the squad that he has to choose from at the moment, I think it would be incredibly difficult whether you're Michael Appleton or whether you're Pep Guardiola. I think playing without a centre forward, and that's taking nothing away from Daniel Kanu, who has done an incredible job. We're asking him to do the job basically at the moment, one young guy, to do the job of two seasoned professionals. You cannot play without centre forwards, I don't believe. Man City can, but they're exceptional. But at this level, I think it's incredibly difficult. I think, everybody has injuries, I accept that, but at the moment we are fairly decimated, with no Miles, no Alfie the last few games, no Chucks. It has been incredibly difficult for Michael to get a team out on the pitch that really reflects him. I see his work every day. I see what he's trying to achieve. I think we've seen glimpses of it. But yes, I don't want this to sound like some dreaded vote of confidence because, it's cliched and nothing could be further from the truth. But Michael is indeed our head coach and there's been no conversations about that changing.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just, Charlotte, if I could just jump in and say hello to everyone and
hello,
echo Heather's thanks for speaking with us all this evening. But I do think I would like to push you a little bit on that point, to be completely honest with you. And I think the fans really want to know, what is the difference with Appleton? We saw at the start of the season, Dean Holden, unfortunately, had some similar challenges and had a poor start to the season. I think it was something like 1 win in 6. And he was sort of no longer with us because of that. So why is Michael Appleton being afforded the time that Dean Holden wasn't, especially when Dean was such a popular figure with the fan base? I think that people are just sort of struggling to see what the difference is here and, how long is Appleton going to get to turn things around?
We're slightly damned if we do and damned if we don't, Lucy. I remember when Dean left at the time, I think we had a fans forum or a fans meeting shortly after that. And we were chastised, understandably. Everybody's allowed an opinion. We were slightly chastised at that point for getting rid of Dean too quickly. Now it seems, just with the line of your question, which is perfectly reasonable, by the way, bear in mind the results, it seems to be that, why aren't we acting sooner to do something about Michael? So it's, those two things are slightly at odds. I think, when we discussed this previously regarding Dean, I think some of the things that concerned us were some of the just the way that the training ground wasn't working, the training ground wasn't operating effectively, the tempo, the style of the training. And I don't want to be disparaging of Dean at all. I did think the world of Dean. I do think the world of Dean. I think Dean is a good manager. I think Dean had been through an awful lot in the summer of turmoil about, are we buying the football club? Aren't we buying the football club? Who's my boss? I think he suffered from not being able to recruit exactly what it was that he wanted in the summer. So I think as much as anything else, Dean was the victim of these things. I don't think it reflects on his abilities as a manager at all. I'm sure he'll go on to be a very, very good manager. But at that stage, we were chastised for getting rid of Dean too quickly, and now it seems to be, why are we affording Michael, more time? Maybe we've learnt from the comments previously. Maybe we've learnt a little bit from Dean Holden. Listen, Michael understands the rules of engagement. Absolutely he does. You know, you can't keep losing games week in, week out, week in, week out. Everybody know how that works. But at the moment, we want to give him, by the time we get to February the 1st, February the 2nd, that will be our squad for the end of the season, until the end of the season. Hopefully by then, Michael can be judged effectively when he's got more of the tools at his disposal.
I think another thing, Lucy, is that, look, if changing the manager was the answer, we'd be in the Premier League already. You know, we do believe in the need for stability, and clearly the most successful time that Charlton had was when we had stability in the coaching staff. So that is something which we're striving for, and we need, as we said before, as Jim just said, we need to give them the tools for them to be successful. You know, this isn't on Michael. You know, it's on us not having delivered the tools yet. Now, it's our first opportunity perhaps here to deliver the tools where we've got a full window that we're working at. It's going to be difficult, but we want to give them the tools, and we want to go again and do that again in the summer.
Heather, Lucy, Lewis, the floor is all yours. So please, you know, follow up, fire the questions over. Hopefully, Lucy, that's answered that particular question.
Yeah. No, really interesting just to get the thoughts, and you know, like you said, you're sort of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, and I'm sure not everyone's going to agree with you, but really appreciate the honesty in the answer nevertheless. So thank you for that. I'm conscious of timings, and I know fans are sending in questions as well, so just going to sort of move onto fan engagement, if that's okay. And obviously you referenced that in your presentation, and I think it's fair to say, Gavin, you and I have spoken about this, that the fan base is sort of disillusioned at the moment for various reasons, and that's been acknowledged for a very long time now, for one reason or another, you know, ownership and takeovers and things like that. Fan engagement feels like it's been led by volunteers, two of which you have here with you tonight, and that's by no means a complaint on our part. We absolutely love it, and that's why we do it. But I think what we would like to know, and what the fans would like to know, is what is the club's plan for fan engagement, and how is the club going to take ownership of this and really harness the fan groups and the fan base that you have at your disposal?
Well, I mean, I would certainly admit, and I've advised, you know, fellow owners and the senior management team that, you know, just as the stability in the coaching staff was an important ingredient in the most successful time Charlton had, the fans were as well. And, you know, that's fan engagement during match days, and it's fan engagement throughout the week with the football club. So it is absolutely a critical ingredient if we're going to be successful here. We want to try different options on fan engagement. I think this forum is just one example of something which we are looking to do, and you know, it's not our intent for this to be a one-off forum. We would like to do this regularly. We'll do in-person forums, we'll do online forums. We are looking at implementing a shadow board. This is something that we have been discussing a little bit with Cast and others. I think it's important that we get that right, so we're not rushing into that, but we're evaluating options. We're looking at where shadow boards have been successful, whether that's at like football clubs like Norwich or at Liverpool. We're looking at implementing that. As you know, Lucy, we've spoken to you and Lewis about your roles as fan advisors, how, you know, you can help us, you know, by providing us feedback directly from supporters, raising those issues with us so that we can address them, as well as being a sense check on upcoming activity. But I would also turn that question around to the fans as well, is how would you like to engage with us? Because we're very open to listening from you on how you would like to engage with us. But there's no doubt about it, you know, fan engagement is going to be critical if we are to be successful over the next 5 years.
I think Gavin stole my thunder there, Lucy, a little bit. I was going to say the same thing. How did the fans, you know, we don't sit here professing we've got all the answers and we know what we're doing and we should do it this way. We're in listening mode. People, how would the fans like us to engage with them? I'm really interested in that. Actually, Heather from Cast, Heather's colleague Heather from Cast sent a really interesting paper last Friday about, you know, for discussion and debate about how a shadow board, you know, might work. It's not the perfect paper, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a really interesting, well thought through piece of work that stimulates debate. But that might not be for all supporters. And how do we best engage with people? Andy Scott and I, we spoke to the Bromley Addicts the other week. We haven't got all the answers. I'd be really, really interested to know what it is that people want from us on a regular basis. It's not difficult. I'll talk to people until the cows come home, clearly, about the football club. And I think we're fairly honest people. And if the things that we can't answer, then I'll tell you I can't answer it. But we're in listening mode in that regard, Lucy, and I'd love to hear what it is that the fans want from us and how they want us to engage, how you want us to engage.
Well, I can tell you one thing, we are getting hundreds upon hundreds of messages and questions through, and really appreciate you coming on board and asking yours. So Heather, I'll turn to you for one last question, if that's okay, and then take on some more questions from those joining us live on Charlton TV.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about money. I don't know who wants to take that question, but in terms of pricing strategy going forward, to buy a ticket for Charlton, be a season ticket or a match day ticket or whatever, is quite a complicated affair. It's become very, very layered. It would be a lot easier for a lot of people if it was more simple and straightforward. And equally, we need to fill the valley with existing supporters coming more often and also introducing new people to the valley. What might we expect in terms of our pricing strategy? And accompanying that is also how that might fit with the reports from one of the shareholders, Charlie Medford, in the Daily Telegraph a little while ago about wanting to reduce the club's losses to around 1.5 million to 2 million per season. So fill the affordable football, reduce shareholders' losses by... How do we reconcile those two things?
First of all, when you're talking about season ticket strategies for next season, Heather, that's something we're talking about at the moment. We're sort of in the early stages of that at the moment. But we're quite happy to chat with you guys about it. So again, we're in absolute listening mode in that regard. I can't give you any concrete examples at the moment, but it's really interesting for me to hear that it's actually difficult to buy. Our idea is that everything is as easy as is humanly possible to buy. We're actually going to implement relatively quickly one of these one sign-in, which is the holy grail, I'm told, of EPOS and things, so you can buy everything with in a one-stop shop effectively. But yeah, well, listen, it has to be the aspiration of every football club to get their losses down. We bandish words about like sustainability these days like it's absolute confetti. So, our losses at the moment in League One are £6 or £7 million a year. I don't think that's a position that anybody really wants to be in, but that's a fact of life. That's where we are. That's what the owners bought into. They understand that. How can we bring that down? Well, I don't want to be, this isn't remotely patronising, but what we've got to do, we've got to drive our income much better than we are. And if there are ways we can make efficiencies, and I think without, deflecting from the playing budget or making people's experience worse, we're all about making our experiences better. Of course, we are always going to be a trading model as a football club. All football clubs are trading models. Man United have to sell Cristiano Ronaldo at some stage. Our idea, if we get players into the team, the idea is, and the smart thing to do, is to sell players at the right time for considerable profit. That's just what football clubs do. All football clubs do. So, these are the sorts of sensible business decisions that we have to make to try to make those losses smaller. Charlie talks about, I didn't see the article you refer to, but, trying to get those losses down to £1.5 million overnight is, as you can imagine, going to be quite a stretch. That is a fact. But I think when we do that, the key is to try to, we're not coming under immense pressure from our shareholders to stem the losses. We're not coming under immense pressure from our shareholders to do anything, quite frankly, apart from probably win more games of football, because that's what we all want to do. But we've got to start making really smart business decisions. You know, we have to get more people in here. We've got to make coming to Charlton Athletic more appealing for more people. You know, if you're telling me it's quite difficult, I'm the same as you. I go online to buy something. If it becomes too difficult to buy, I just abort straight away. You know, we can't have that. I'd be really interested to understand those experiences so we can do something about it. But it's just about making smart business decisions. And if we can get it down to 1.5 million and we can improve the football, crikey, we've really achieved something. But I think, you know, to use a cliche, Rome wasn't built in a day, Heather.
Lucy, I'll come to you next because I've had the pleasure of interviewing and talking to you before, and I know how much this football club means to you, and many supporters joining us live on Charlton TV. In that fan advisor role, you spend a lot of time listening and speaking to supporters. So if I could ask for a final question from yourself before we then do turn to our WhatsApps.
Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of questions I've still got whirring around in my head, and I'm sure you've got thousands on WhatsApp, but I just wanted to pick up specifically on something Jim said there about the shareholders sort of, you know, not really pushing for anything, but Gavin earlier this evening said that the shareholders, when the investors came in, that they were aware that the club was underperforming. So there's a discrepancy there, I think, that fans might pick up on. You know, you're saying in one breath that the shareholders were aware that they've taken on an underperforming club, but now you're saying that they're not particularly pushing for anything. So where's the ambition? Are the shareholders still in it for the long term? Have they still got passion, or is this just going to be sort of another flash in the pan like we've seen before?
I think I'll probably start off because, like you said, if those statements are contradictory, and then it might be quite useful to Gavin to jump in at that point. Oh no, believe you me, their ambition burns bright. One of our investors flew into London for about 12 hours on Saturday and came to the Port Vale game with me. He had a wonderful afternoon out in Port Vale, a place he never thought he would go to, but he thoroughly enjoyed the experience. These guys are desperately ambitious, and they are in it for the long haul. You know, why invest in? I might leave that for Gavin to answer, actually. But these people are motivated, and don't get me wrong. If I came across as a little bit flippant about it, Lucy, I shouldn't have done. These people are ambitious. They've not just come to waste a load of money in a South London football club. They want to build this football club to where it was previously. Absolutely, they do. But they understand that is going to be a long haul. It's going to be a lot of blood, sweat and tears from us, and it's going to cost money. So apologies if I was remotely flippant about that, saying they're a bit laissez-faire about it. They're not. They take a keen interest in this. They challenge us with everything that we do. And they didn't invest in this football club just to lose money. But they also understand that it's a long-term project. And interestingly, since we started this project, my goodness me, they are a lot more engaged in Charlton Athletic now, which is where you want your owners engaged. This football club has probably been at its lowest ebbs, when the owners come in with good intentions and then their interest for whatever reason wanes. The interest in all our, I say this without fear of a contradiction again, the interest in all our investors burns incredibly brightly. They challenge us. They've given us the tools to do the job. We've got to get on and do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a long-term project. I mean, none of us have invested in this, you know, at a whim or thinking, you know, overnight success is possible. So as an investor group, we have agreed with the senior management team that they have time to assess and put in those plans and execute them. And now, as a board and investor group, we need to make sure that there is accountability. They're held accountable for executing those plans. But you can't hold someone accountable when you haven't given them that opportunity to plan. And there's a plan. It's been funded by the investors. There's a significant transfer budget there for January, just part of the plan. And, you know, we need to make sure now that, you know, they are held accountable. But there is, to Jim's point, I mean, significant engagement. No one is satisfied with the results on the pitch, but none of us came in with a magic wand or expecting that simply us turning up there would be instant success on the pitch. You know, none of us had those expectations. We came in eyes wide open. We've got to execute those plans. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Gavin, and thank you to Lucy and Heather as well. I think it's fair to say that some of the questions that you've posed are the ones that have been coming through on WhatsApp as well. And it leads me quite nicely to a question that we've had from Bradley, who sort of says, no disrespect to those around the table, but why aren't the owners here themselves? to do an interview, to do a press conference to discuss their plans. They feel like they've not heard from one of them. So I suppose it comes down to that respect of the dynamic you were talking about between the ownership, the senior management, and Paul, do you want to address that?
Can I make a point? Because I think if you look at corporate structures, if you look at a lot of clubs across the country, whether it's Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea, you know, you have a group of people who are very, very wealthy. They invest in an executive and a senior management team to run the football club. And obviously there's lines of accountability. And Charlton is no different to what I call that 21st century model. So ultimately, you know, we've got a board, and with all due respect to the previous regimes, there wasn't a board like the current board that we have. That's diverse, representative of football, representative of the local demographic, and also, you know, we're going to be bringing on one or two other people in the future that's going to add huge value to enhance that and mobilise that. So I think, you know, if you look at it, that's the way the modern 21st century, that's just corporate governance, the way football clubs are. And ultimately, you know, there's lines of accountability, and we're all accountable. And another point I wanted to make, and just tapping on from the previous point, in football, the only way, if we're all very, very honest with each other, the only way these investors make money, serious money, is if Charlton Athletic is in the Premier League. That's where the value is. That's where the value of the broadcasting rights are. The broadcasting rights recent was just for £7 billion. So as a consequence of that, you have to invest. You have to evolve. You have to grow. Otherwise, it becomes a futile exercise, especially if we've established what the losses are. So what we're trying to do is obviously commercialise, which is imperative, but also evolve the club as well. And I just think that's just a sort of baseline that I just think is very important from an investor standpoint. None of those investors are going to make the money until we are in the Premier League and have the aspiration to go to the Premier League, which is why, through my optics, what's the most important thing on the field? To get out of League One. That remains the prima facie objective. And then, you know, create some semblance of stability. So that's how I see it as somebody in, but obviously with a considered view on the wider picture of the investors and what I believe. And there's a genuine aspiration to do that because we've got all the potential assets to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, I think it's more typical than we might sometimes think for investors to be silent. You know, they have established a governance and management structure, implemented a board to drive their investment. So I don't think it's uncommon for investors to, you know, I mean, you can see them. I mean, they come to games. You know, we sit over there. You know, they've got a management team in place running Charlton Athletic. In the past, it wasn't that way. Look, under Thomas, it wasn't that way. You know, it was a single owner who chose to manage the football club themselves. You know, our investors do not manage the football club. They hire a team to manage the football club. That's the structure. And so we do want to keep it as simple as that. Because if not, we're not empowering the management team to manage the football club.
And there's, I think, a great appreciation from supporters of having the opportunity to ask you the direct questions, to ask you perhaps some difficult questions. And we've had a lot regarding Michael Appleton, which I think, James, you answered earlier on, so I'm not going to repeat that one. But we have had a question from Clint, who says, much of the fans' discontent so far has been centred around the performance of Andy Scott. 2 managerial appointments in 12 months, approximately 18 players signed across 3 windows, only 2 of which, in Clint's opinion, can be called a success so far. Clint asks, why isn't Andy here tonight to be held accountable, and what do the investors make of his performance in his role?
Again, I think well, I'll tell you why Andy isn't here tonight. I know exactly where Andy is tonight. Andy's trying to persuade a player who would be incredibly welcome at Charlton Athletic to come and join us. That's where Andy is. Andy's working night and day at the moment to try to get deals over the line, as we all are. It's the focus on everything at the moment. You can't judge Andy Scott just based on, you know, what's gone on the pitch recently. You know, if you go to the training ground, the whole vibe, the whole culture, the whole structure, everything that's gone on, he's putting building blocks in place that are going to help this football club for years to come. Of that, I'm absolutely no doubt. Andy's as disappointed as anybody in terms of the results at the moment. That's not what we planned for, but it's been literally no time whatsoever. I mean, if you actually look at transfer windows, crikey, so effectively, when did we come in? July the 21st. So the season started about 10 days later. You know, most of all the transfers that you would have liked to have done during that period, they all happen in June and July. They don't happen in August. And now where are we now? We're 10 days into another window that is, I've been doing this a long time, 20 odd years. This is the most difficult January window I've ever seen. AFCON's going on, the Premier League aren't releasing their players at the moment. It's definitely a seller's market. A lot of clubs are a lot less distressed than you would imagine. So I think it's really unfair on Andy. I mean, I see how hard he works every day and how much he cares about this football club. And look, I get it. We're all there to, you know, for people to throw rocks at us. That's fine. It comes with the territory. We're in incredibly privileged positions. But, you know, I think I answered the question about Michael. I would answer it equally as robustly with Andy. You know, Andy sits on the board with us. He's accountable to the board. The board challenge him. It is a difficult. He has got one difficult job. That is a fact, and it's going to take time. Whatever anybody thinks, we've got our tin hats on. We're here for the long term. You know, we will get this right. We will get it right eventually.
I think I can remember interviewing Michael after we'd beaten Reading 4-0 here, and I said something along the lines of, because you know the squad was fully fit, the team was playing good football. I said, "You get to enjoy it in the technical area," and it really stuck with me how he said, we're 3-0 up with 5 minutes to go and I'm still completely immersed. I can't let myself have that moment. And it really honed in the point to me, the amount of focus and how all-consuming it can be when you plan, you then deliver and you try to execute. And there are so many things out of your control as well. It's a very, very difficult job. And it's, you know, right that supporters question that. And as I mentioned, we have a lot there about Michael Appleton coming through, and also a little bit coming through around the training ground and the stadium, because of course, there's no ownership of that yet. What are the plans in the future? Because I can imagine, you know, if we had that all fully funded Magic Wand, we would want to own this place again.
Of course, and the aspiration is that ultimately the Sparrows Lane and the Valley get joined back up to the football club, so they come under the same ownership as the football club. That absolutely is the aspiration. Or you end up signing a 100-year lease, or so we have that security of tenure. We've had early conversations with the landlord. Everything's very amicable. Everything's been done in a very respectful way. But these are big property transactions. Let's be right. You know, if you came to sell your house, it would probably take you, assuming you had a buyer, that transaction would take you 4 or 5 months. You imagine trying to buy the Valley and Sparrows Lane. But we've had those early conversations. Things are, would I even say they're moving in the right direction? I think what we have to do as much as anything else is actually prove our credibility. You know, we really have to do that. We're quite happy to do that, but conversations are ongoing. Of course, that's a major aspiration for us. If we're going to invest in this stadium, we need ownership of it. But matters are underway.
Next question from Mickey. Is Charlton TV going to continue next season? And I think we've had a few comments around it just kind of in the long term. And again, people saying how good it's been to be able to have this opportunity tonight on Charlton TV.
Well, Charlton TV is clearly fantastic. We're incredibly proud of the product. And as you saw it,
I didn't pose that.
I'm sure you did.
Why did that come from a Charlotte in Sig Cup? You are the consummate professional, even though icicles on your nose.
Yeah, I know. Can we get some heat in for the Charlton TV studio,
the first thing I can assure you, I'm going to sign off a heater in here tomorrow.
Brownie and Curves will be delighted with that news as well, I can tell you.
No problem at all. What people have got to bear in mind with Charlton TV, and this isn't a Charlton Athletic thing, from next season, there is no domestic streaming. The EFL decided to sell their rights in a very different way to Sky. So effectively, the EFL sold the rights to Sky for considerably about an extra £70 million a year. But what Sky have done is bought the streaming rights. So there is no domestic streaming next year in the EFL. And that's not a Charlton Athletic decision. The EFL took that decision at their AGM in June. The clubs actually took that decision. The clubs signed that off. So there will be no domestic streaming next season. And it's still to be determined what they're going to do about overseas streaming. I think the overseas TV deal is out to tender at the moment. So that's yet to be determined as well. So whatever happens, listen, we're incredibly proud of the job that you guys do at Charlton TV. But I think it's important for people to understand this isn't our decision or a Charlton decision. This decision was taken by the EFL clubs back in June.
There you go. Thank you for asking and for answering that. Martin asks, sort of on the Charlton TV note, if Steve Brown could be brought in as a consultant. I think, again, people really appreciate his insights, and there's like a lot of people that care about Charlton Athletic around the football club. I don't know who wants to answer that one at all.
Well, we talked to Brownie. Often, and in fact, I'm with Brownie tomorrow. I think there's always the opportunity to continue to add to the talent that we have here. I'm not sure if Brownie wants to do that. I mean, we would have to have that conversation with him. But he's obviously incredibly insightful about Charlton, about the playing style. And it would be great to have more involvement from Brownie. But he does advise us today. We exchange a lot of WhatsApps messages, and a lot of the thinking around building up the core. The 8 plus 8 plus 8 comes from testing some of those things with people like Brownie. But he knows what winning looks like as well.
He certainly does, that's for sure. On the subject of the 8 plus 8 plus 8, Andrew's messaged in, where do the Premier League loans fit in with this? He mentioned the likes of Liam Miller and Conor Gallagher fitting in and adding. So again, how do you balance all of that when you're working towards this structure?
With great difficulties. That's the simple answer. And it's easier to do in the summer than in January. Listen, loans. I mean, the reality is this January, as much as we want to bring in permanent signings that are going to help us in the long term, we also need to understand that we need to start winning games immediately. Fortunately, some of our injured players are coming back, but January tends to be more about loans than about permanence, and that's probably where we find ourselves. But we are, currently we have offers. I think they've been quite well reported in the media to sign players permanently who think they could help us in the long term. But yeah, the Premier League loans, if you get the right ones, I was fortunate enough earlier on in my career, I had Jack Grealish's first loan. I say Conor Gallagher, you see some absolutely superb examples. And if you can get players like that, it is like Raksaki last season, who was fabulous for us. They are like gold dust. But again, there was a significant cost a lot of the time attributed to bringing these players in. So they will end up fitting into, they will fit into one of the first two buckets. Clearly, are they your elite players? Are they your middle players? Clearly, they're not your academy players. But we've also got to believe if you're taking a young player from the Premier League, you've got to believe he's better than our academy players. Where would we go and get a better young player than Corey Anderson, for example? Daniel being asked to do the job of two men, Nathan when he's played. I mean, they've been those three young guys have been an absolute revelation this season. I mean, sometimes you almost don't want them to play as many games as they've had to, but what you can't do, okay, if you're signing a Jack Grealish or a Conor Gallagher, these people are special talents. The vast majority of players that you sign on loan probably aren't. So you've got to get those right.
I'm conscious that we're quickly approaching the scheduled time that we were meant to end, but the opportunity of having you here is so priceless. So let's get through some more questions.
Right, you don't get hypothermia.
I know. If I'm sniffly on Saturday, everyone, you know why. But look, this is perhaps the most predictable question of the evening. Lewis is asking about an update with regards to the contracts of George Dobson and Corey Blackett-Taylor, two players that during their time here have become firm favourites and consistent this season.
It's, both players have been offered what we believe are good contracts. I have sympathy for players, I really do. They have short careers. Their job is to maximise, what they earn, what they get paid. I respect that. I was a very bad one myself once upon a time. And so it's nothing personal against them, but we've got to do what's right for the football club as well. On the one hand, you want to protect your investment. On the other hand, you can't go crazy with these matters. So listen, both players have been offered what we believe are very good contracts. We'd love them to sign their contracts, but they either will or they won't, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think it was interesting, actually. Andy and I did Bromley Addicts a month ago. And we asked the question, what would you do with these players if there was an offer on the table and the players hadn't wanted to sign their contracts? I'm not trying to demonise these two players. I think they've been fabulous all season, both of them. But what would you do with them? Every single person in the room said sell them. Sell them. Take the money, sell them if they don't want to sign contracts. Like I said, I'm really labouring the point. There's no problem. You sign contracts, don't sign contracts. That's your own personal choice. All we can do is offer things that we think are fair and equitable, and we've done that. And the players will either stay or the players won't. You know, Charlton will. I hope they do, but Charlton will go on.
Paul, I'm going to ask Stephen's question to you because, again, sometimes after matches we'll bump into each other and have a chat about games and the progress, or perhaps lack of progress, particularly with the injury crisis we have on our hands. Stephen asks, do you recognise that we are in a relegation battle?
Of course. I mean, but a lot of it's a mindset thing. I look up, but also I look down. And, you know, what this has taught me is about sensibility and pragmatism. And the truth of the matter is, we're in a very challenging position at this moment in time. Horrific injury lists. As you said, I think we collectively, individually, we've articulated about the need for recruitment. I'm hopeful now people are far more understanding and cognizant of the complexities of the process. It's not a single trigger fix. You know, we are working extremely hard, you know, the executives and as a board, to be as effective as we can possibly be. And listen, I'm a very positive person, but I'm not one who gets deluded as well. And it's a very, very challenging period. And it's only with hard work, with the continual positive work, improving the culture, you know, trying to get players through the door and adding value to the squad. And obviously, you know, Michael is working extremely hard on the training ground. So we're kind of all together, all one, all Charlton. We just have to be inextricably together and aligned, because anything less than that, for me, it won't be good enough.
Curbs and I were in the studio the other day and we were talking obviously about when you've got 4 centre forwards missing, it's pretty impossible. But then you remember the likes of Terry Taylor, Conor McGrandles, Harry Isted, Panucci Kamara. It's a real tough time, and hopefully with some of those players coming back, they might feel like new signings as well. We've had lots of questions coming in with regards to the parking restrictions, and Jane and some others have messaged in. Can the club put pressure on Greenwich Council regarding those restrictions? With the amount of work the Community Trust does in the borough, it seems wrong to bring in a scheme that will damage that.
We want to have good relationships, and we want to be good citizens in the Royal Borough of Greenwich. And believe you me, we've had meetings, I've written to them, we put pressure on them, we have explained to them. Cast have done a wonderful job actually of doing exactly the same, of collating lots of surveys that they've done. And one of the saddest things about this, it appears that it hits people, you know, it hits a certain demographic, you know, an older demographic, people who can't take public transport, that are worried about taking public transport. It hits them the hardest. Now, you know, we've tried to explain this, that, you know, we're a high profile, you know, reasonably big business in the area, and we don't think that our council are helping us in this regard. But, you know, I know the environment is incredibly important to all of us, quite frankly, and the Mayor of London. But I think the council, their position is that they have targets that they have to hit, and they have to stop people driving into the borough. We won't give up the fight. We've done as much as we possibly can. I think today, I've arranged a meeting with Cass to discuss exactly that. We will keep fighting the good fight. But as much as anything, this is about you guys speaking to your local councillors and, you know, putting pressure on them, quite frankly, because the worst thing about this, I think, is the people that it affects the most, are the people in society that we probably are a little bit more vulnerable. We need to be looking after the most.
Absolutely. Well, I know Extra Time hasn't been kind to us in recent weeks, but I'm going to install some of it now because we've got so many questions to get through still.
No
and like I said, I want to make the most of this opportunity. James has messaged in saying, looking at what's been presented in terms of the squad, we've brought elite League One players before who've been consistently poor when playing for us. How can we avoid this happening so we don't drain funds? A really, really good question. Gavin, do you have any kind of instinctive response to that?
Well, I'm not the footballing expert here, but I go back to giving people the tools to be successful at the job, and clearly the coaching staff is, you know, as part of that, and, you know, we need to continue to invest in that area. I do think a little bit of stability will help. I do think that the plan now around the structure of the squad means that we're buying the right players with the right characteristics. So, you know, it's you need leadership. You know, you need players that are going to continue to develop that youth and stuff. So, you know, simply going out and buying the top players is not, you know, you're not necessarily going to build the best team, obviously. You know, we need to mix all of that together, and I think that the structure we've got, you know, around all the structure which is being built out around scouting with Andy, the build out of the coaching team around Michael, you know, I think that we will turn the odds in our favour to be more successful than we have in the past. We also need to learn lessons of the past as well. And a key part of what actually has been done over the last 5 months is look back at the past. What worked? And we know things like, you know, the community trust works really well. We know the academy works really well, but we've looked at things that didn't work in the past to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. And a big part of our board meetings is making sure we're learning the lessons.
And let me add to that as well, because I think it's important as well to recognise we've got some outstanding young talent historically. So it's about buying the right type of players, the right character of players, the players who we believe are the right mature players that's going to add value and support and have an influence on the dressing room. You know, bringing in the right men of the right age with potentially the right potential resale as well. They're going to be excellent role models to empower and support those young players on their journey and be excellent advocates for the club. So I think there's a number of potential characteristics, and to get that, it's not easy. It's not easy, you know. But, you know, I always think about the spine of the team. It's so critical, it's so important. And, you know, I think we are clear exactly what we want. And I think now it's just about working through that process as we are. And Jim has articulated very well about Andy Scott. I've got a lot of respect for him. He puts a shift in. And he takes a lot on himself. And I think it's just important now to emphasise where Gavin's coming from. It's about now giving everybody the support. Be the best that we can be as a board, to hold ourselves to account, to give support to each and everyone, to enable them to be their best, to make that positive contribution to evolve the club.
Building on that, Paul, I think Jim's really explained the complexities of the January market at the best of times, particularly this season, how difficult it is to attract permanent signings. But in terms of the loan market, I sense there's a bit of a fear among supporters in terms of history repeating itself, in loan signings coming in that maybe are carrying injuries or not quite fully fit, ready to hit the ground, in the sense that for many in August, September, it felt like our players weren't fit enough and strong enough after pre-season. So can you sort of give your take on that?
That's always a consideration, and obviously, you know, that's always a risk, you know, because you know, we've obviously seen with players, you know, one or two that's not been, you know, that have to be incrementally embedded into the squad. You know, obviously the lad that we've got from Sheffield Wednesday, you know, oven ready, looks ready to go, right age, right characteristics that we want. And I think that's setting the tone for what we really want and what we're trying to aspire to get. And it's never easy. These are very subjective things. And I just think that at the end of the day, there is not a limit of a pool of talent out there that's available. We've just got to make decisions to bring in the best that we can get our hands on, that's going to add value to get us to our destination. That, with obviously the existing players trying to get fitter to create that competitive spirit within the dressing room again.
And what we've got to get to, Charlotte, as well, is we've got to start looking, you know, 1, 2, even 3 transfer windows ahead of where we are. We've got to break this cycle of panic, of drama. Got to get some players in. Got to get some players in. It's interesting. I was talking to my friend just before Christmas, and he's one of the most senior guys at Liverpool in terms of their recruitment. You know, it takes them a lot of the time 2 years to sign a player. They identify a player, for the building blocks to come in place, for them to be able to negotiate. It takes them 2 years. You know, it's as long as that. I'm not suggesting we would have that length of time, and hopefully they're often only signing 1 or 2 players a window. But we've got to get ourselves into that situation eventually. And it's going to take a little bit of pain to get there, to be honest with you. It's going to take some pain. We're going to end up signing players that we think we can do, that can do a job for a period of time, but maybe they aren't the absolute answer. But we've got to give people some pride back in that shirt. We've got to give the fans some pride back in that shirt. We've got to win some games of football. I mean, they're the simple, you know, football isn't a complicated game, particularly for the fans. For everything we've spoke about today, we've got to win more games of football. For Charlton Athletic, you know, we're playing football, we're in League One. We have to win more games of football. We are so acutely aware of that.
Yeah, and ultimately, we don't want to rely on loan players, obviously, because the loan players that are successful are going to get called back. I mean, we saw that with Connor. And so, you know, we've got to make sure that we're executing that plan, you know, the AAA, and there will have to be loan players filling gaps, because we want to be patient as well as we want to get the right players in. So there may be players that we're looking at now that we're not going to get in January, but we're trying, but then we'll go again in the summer to fill those positions. So there may be some stop gaps which you use your loan players for.
Hector's messaged in, I'm sure it's probably not Michael Hector, another Hector, if we have a significant transfer budget, where are the players we are meant to be signing?
There we go, we do. Money is available to us, but you've still got to persuade people to sell their best players. That isn't easy. Then sometimes the demands of said players are sometimes absolutely extortionate, and you have to think to yourself, are they worth that kind of money? You know, we fortunately, as Gavin's explained previously, we have the ability to go to the market, but it doesn't matter if you've got all the money in the world if nothing's for sale. You know, it really is as simple as that. And what we won't do is, you know, we probably would end up spending over the odds slightly at the moment because of the position that we're in. But we're not going to be silly about it. We're not going to be naive. We're not going to be stupid about it.
Jim, we can't buy for the sake of buying as well. We want to get the right type, the right character to make the right input.
It comes back to that point you were making, wasn't it? Like, you know, about coming and being a part of Charlton.
Correct. And the loan thing, it's a short-term thing. And I can see, you know, you look at Bolton, 1 or 2 loan signings they made, are excellent, they're adding value at the appropriate time. You know, everybody says, well, why don't you sign all the players that you want to do on the 1st of January? Well, of course, that would be absolutely ideal, but that's the reason you have a deadline. And, you know, Sky gets excited on that's the 1st of February this year, isn't it, when people are running around between training grounds, because it's that deadline that gets things done. You know, it's hysterical. Somebody should come and follow me around on transfer deadline day, because you might as well stay in bed till lunchtime, because nothing happens, and then people about 2 o'clock in the afternoon think, oh, there's a transfer deadline today, better start doing things. I mean, it is the most surreal experience at times. I know you've been around it an awful lot, and then everybody starts running around. You think, why are these deals wait until the last minute? But it's just the nature of deadlines, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a business like no other. The rumour mill, of course, is in overdrive, and a name, I'm surprised it hasn't come up earlier, in fact. Johnson Clark Harris, any update on him at all? Obviously, I think it's been widely reported a bid has been accepted.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously were playing Peterborough. It's a club that we know very well. We came to an agreement with Peterborough, but again, the player's out of contract at the end of the season. And at the moment, he's trying to work out whether he's better off coming to, you know, signing a contract now, or whether his real value comes as a free agent in the summer. That's ultimately his decision. All we can ever do is put our best foot forward, and we do that. We do that. We're not here to scrimp and scrape. We go through the front door. We do things properly. You know, we pay people appropriately. But also, we're not here to have a trouser leg lifted either. And I'm not suggesting that's what Johnson Clark Harris is doing. I'm not suggesting that at the moment. Every footballer is quite entitled to maximise his earnings. No issue with that whatsoever. By the same token, we have to be sensible about it.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's get through a flurry of final questions. A few people are asking about Curbs and getting him a footballing role at the club. I mean, we're sitting in the Alan Kirbishley stand, the respect and the job that he's done. It's an honour to share a studio with him sometimes with those insights. Is it something that the club would look to tap into more?
Well, personally, I have my conversations with what I've spoken. I had a fabulous conversation. And from a point of, when you've got a man who's a very distinguished man, a very decent man, a very Charlton man, why would you not be having conversations? That's what I do. I always tap into people that know more than me in certain areas, because that's how we learn, that's how we evolve, that's how we grow. So personally, I remember having a long chat, you know, with Alan in particular about after the Bolton game about what they look like. This is their 3rd year in Division 1 and their whole journey. And obviously Alan was giving those really interesting insights about the challenge of getting out of League One, which obviously, you know, he's got a tremendous amount of experience and cognizant of. So from my standpoint, obviously I'm not the decision-making organ. However, what I do, I understand in my world what I call, you know, that diversity of opinion and thinking. And why would we not tap into him? We've spoken to Brownie. Why would we not be tapping into that? And I think we are doing that and have done that.
We operate a very open door policy as well at the training ground as here. You know, whether it's Curbs, Keith Peacock, Brownie, Scott Minto, whoever, everybody's welcome here. They really are. We understand that these people are the absolute heartbeat and the fabric of this football club, and they're very welcome at this football club anytime. Mi casa, su casa.
Quick question, have we looked, or can we bring in safe standing?
We had a meeting this week, actually. It's good timing since they asked that question. I think ultimately we will bring in some safe standing. Easy for me to say. We actually had meetings with the architect this week, so we're looking at certain areas in the North Stand. I think that is likely to happen. You know, it's not imminent. It's not in the next 5 minutes, but undoubtedly there will be safe standing at the Valley eventually. I think that's a given.
Final question then: how close are we on the FFP budget?
Well, okay, we're in a good place with it. We're actually monitored without boring people with the technical details. We get monitored, you know, as every club in League One is subject to what's called salary cost management protocol, which is basically it's a forecasting exercise and it's amount of your turnover you can spend on player wages. So we're monitored on that basis, the same as everybody else. But also we are monitored under what's called FFI, Future Financial Information. So when the owners bought the football club, we had to basically sign up to a 2-year business plan, which is the thing that spits out the losses. So we get monitored 2 ways, and we're in a very comfortable place in both places.
Brilliant. Well, look, Jim, Paul, Gavin, thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really interesting and insightful, and thank you to supporters who have joined us as well. I hope that you have found this an equally interesting and engaging exercise as well. We are back here on Saturday for the visit of Peterborough United, and if you want to join us on Charlton TV, then streaming passes are available for £10, but we would love it if you could get here to the Valley to support the boys for that game.
May I just say one thing?
Of course you can.
Have I got time? I think I speak on behalf of all of us here that we are incredibly privileged to be in the position that we're in, and we take that responsibility incredibly seriously. You know, whether we get it right or whether we get it wrong, we're doing things for all the right reasons. We're doing everything that we possibly can in the best interest of Charlton Athletic Football Club. I think I speak on behalf of my directors. We're privileged, we're honoured, we won't get it right all of the time, but even the mistakes we'll make for the right reasons.
Thank you so much. So without further ado then, I think it's safe to say throughout all the highs, the lows, wins, losses and draws, there is always one consistent at this football club, and that is your unwavering support and commitment. On behalf of everyone here at Charlton TV, thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again on Saturday.